Okay, thanks Asif for taking the time to have a conversation with us today. I really appreciate it, and I know you can't make it to the event. I'm really sorry that you're not there, but this is a perfect opportunity to hear from you. So we're going to kick off with our first question, which is tell us why you chose diversity and inclusion as a career. What does it mean for you?
Firstly, thank you for having me, and I apologise to everyone for not being able to be there in person. What does diversity and inclusion mean to me, and why did I go on that journey? It's really interesting because I did a bachelor's in management and human resource management, and at that time wanted to be a management consultant. You know, had those big ambitions, and then joined policing. Policing as a police officer, so it was within policing as a police officer. Wanted to make a difference, you know, wanted to be a police officer, but I found during that journey that I was continuously getting attracted to numerous diversity elements of policing. Because I had an interest, or I felt that actually policing could do with some support. Yeah. And that really started my passion for making a difference in that way, and understanding that actually, yes, I had some great passions of wanting to make a difference, but actually organisations needed that support on that diversity journey.
So what do you think that has changed over the last 5 years?
I think diversity, going back 5-10 years, was very much about how do we fit people into boxes. We're trying to define people. It was still at that early stages of figuring out what the D means, and we were grouping people, and it was all about political correctness and what we can and can't say. And fast forward to today, I think it's much more. It's moved on much more since then. People don't want to be a box. I don't want to fit into a box, and others don't want to fit into a box. People want to be identified for being their unique, authentic self. Yeah. And more so, it's about the inclusion piece and how do you create that. So companies have really shifted to that. And again, diversity used to be a nice thing to do. It was a very much when we get time, we'll do a bit of diversity. Yeah. It was almost the CSR element of an organization. Today, diversity is a business imperative. It makes business sense in every single aspect. I'm yet to find someone who would like to challenge me on why diversity doesn't fit into a part of a business. And I'm sure, no, but it fits into everything, right? Yeah, there's no element that doesn't have some element. And when I say diversity, people need to understand that we mean diversity in its broadest sense. Yeah. So it's not just gender, ethnicity, LGBTQ, or disability. It's age diversity, neurodiversity, all these new different factors that are part of diversity. Everything contributes.
And so projecting the future, what would you like to see? How do you think it's going to change in the future?
Diversity is on a massive journey, and we're actually at that point that it's really, really changing already. But I see diversity as tech. Now, we can all remember tech five odd years ago, was a sub-department within IT. Tech is now a business area in itself. You've got chief technology officers, and then they're huge teams. I see diversity in the same way. Diversity is going to be part of business more broadly. I see there being sort of chief diversity officers, and actually diversity people not sitting in HR, but being a part of every element of the business. Because, as I said, it's a business imperative.
Thinking about your experience, can you share a situation where you've had any diversity initiatives opposed?
So I think that there's always, in the past, if I go back in time, quite a few, especially during my early times in policing when I was still on a journey. But that subsequently taught me a lot. And one of the things that really sort of highlighted for me is I need to almost not kill, but suppress the activism in me and start thinking like the business. So if I'm pitching diversity, let me pitch it from the business's perspective, not my personal perspective. Yes. And that really helped me because, after the few knockbacks of, trying to say that that's the right thing to do, we must do this initiative, and it being knocked back because it didn't fit into the bigger agenda, I then realized that it's crucial to pitch it in the right way. And now, anything I pitch around diversity is from how it benefits the business, what difference it makes, and how can we embed it, and that's been hugely successful.
How comfortable was it to be able to shift your sense of that activism into sort of the business imperative? How did that feel for you? How was that journey for you? Because I think that is quite an important part that you sort of said there.
The activism never dies. We're all, we have the activism. We'd go on this journey around D&I for a particular reason. But I guess it's understanding that activism doesn't have long-term sustainable change. So I see things now as, taking those sort of baby steps and we'll get somewhere rather than taking no steps whatsoever. Yeah. And once you see that and understand that, it becomes really, really clear then what the objectives around D&I are. And more so, it's even about, thinking of diversity more broadly. This is the other thing I say to a lot of young people who tend to ask me, now I'm really passionate about gender or ethnicity or any element of diversity. How do I get, what do I do? And I'm like, well, actually, first thing is you start speaking about everything, not just those elements. Yeah. Because actually a win for disability is a win for gender, for race, because it's creating that conversation around inclusion and belonging, which I'm really big on, that we must create a sense of belonging for all our people.
I'm going to touch on about the brand piece, and I know that there's an importance around how we represent brands as a diverse and inclusive workforce. So is there a struggle when we're trying to represent employees, especially from the underrepresented populations, and not wanting to tokenise anyone?
So I think there's two elements to that. There's one from a commercial perspective when we're thinking of being diverse in our ads. It is important, but it should be done for the sake of understanding that actually it's a great opportunity for your commercial teams, not from it's a nice to do. Because when we start looking at it from a nice to do, or the tokenism element, then it just doesn't sit right, because you're still pitching it to the, every element of it doesn't fit right or feel right. Yeah. So the moment you start acknowledging and understanding it more broadly, then you have products that you're pitching out there which are appealing to diverse audiences. I can think of numerous brands that have done a great job of doing that in a way that it doesn't exclude anyone, but is inclusive. So I think that message is really important, that you do it in an inclusive way, because no company wants to lose their core customer base or their majority while trying to capture diversity. And neither do diversity want to be singled out as a user of that product without feeling included in the broader sort of part of what the business is. So that's really important. From an internal perspective, I think it's really, really important not to have token people when you're trying to recruit. So get some models in and have a picture of someone who's different, with the hope that that's going to attract that group or that community to join.
So how do organisations approach people if they do think, okay, we do want to show representation? How do they approach people in those underrepresented populations for photographs, for example, and make them feel that that's okay and not that it is for tokenism?
And I think that's where it's important to make them understand what you're trying to do, right? I mean, if someone comes to me and says, look, we're trying to really engage with diverse customers, what do you think we could do, and could we have a picture of you? I'm all for that, right? But if I feel that you're just doing it to tick a box, then I'm not all for it. So it's really intention, and if intention is explained, then it's fine. It's very similar to when people ask me about terminology, and I know that's slightly different, but people always ask, what's the right terminology for this? I'm like, there isn't any right terminology, because what might offend me might not offend someone else who looks like me. Yes. But it's intent. So if you ask with the right intention and genuinely, I'm not offended with whatever you ask me. And it's the same when it goes to representation. If someone comes and asks me to say, well, Ashraf, we really want to recruit more people from diverse backgrounds. We'd be keen to have some diversity on the pictures. Would you be interested? I would. Yeah. But if someone tells me, well, we need a diverse person to make it look diverse, then I'm not interested, right? Because I don't want to be a token person. The intent has to be right.
So can you remember a specific experience of where you wish that your team had done something differently? So, and if you were to do it again, what would you change?
I guess mentoring, and this whole issue of mentoring role models, which you hear a lot about when it comes to diverse groups. I've done it over the years, and we've set up mentoring schemes where underrepresented groups are mentored by other people from BAME or different backgrounds. However, now in reflection, if I can change anything or if I've learned anything from that, is that actually that ends up sometimes it helps on occasion, but what we needed more than that was sponsorship. Right. So the concept of someone who's actively vouching for you, someone who's opening doors for you, someone who's getting you onto the right jobs. And the same with role models. Role models don't have to look like me. I've come across experiences of where people have aligned people who look like me as my role model, and I'm like, I've got nothing in common with you. I'm, unique in my own self. Yes. So what we really need is more real models, and so that was my learning through that experience, and that's something a lot of companies do, mentoring, right? And I don't in any way, I'm not saying that mentoring is not useful. Yes. It is, but it's understanding sometimes that what more, and I learned from my experiences that sponsorship is a really key element that a lot of diverse, whether it's female, BME. People from other diverse groups lack, is someone sponsoring. They can have all the mentoring in the world, but unless someone is not sponsoring them, it's very hard for them to progress. And actually, Harvard did a piece of research around how your average white male has achieved success. Someone sponsored them. Someone's opened a door for them. Someone said that, oh, that person's really good. Someone's got them the right jobs. So I learned that, and then I launched a program around sponsorship. So that was a big learning for me after being so passionate about mentoring for so long.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Asif.
Thank you.